The kitchen still smelled like Sunday pot roast, but the familiar comfort of family dinner had turned sour. I sat at the oak table where we'd shared meals for 28 years, watching my mother's perfectly manicured nails drum against her wine glass. My father's silence was heavy, expectant, and my brother Michael, well, he just looked smug. "Sarah," Mom began, using that tone she reserved for what she called difficult conversations. "We need to discuss your house situation." My house situation, as if the 3-bedroom Victorian I'd bought after 5 years of saving every penny from my consulting job was somehow a problem that needed solving. "What about it?" I kept my voice neutral, though I already knew where this was heading. The whispered phone calls, the family meetings I wasn't invited to, Michael's sudden interest in my neighborhood. "Your brother's getting married," Dad finally spoke up. "He and Emma need somewhere to start their life together. Something established." I took a slow sip of water, letting the ice clink against my teeth. "They can't afford their own place." "Don't be difficult," Mom snapped. "Emma's family is very particular about appearances. They expect certain standards." Of course they did. Emma came from old money, the kind that looked down on Michael's middle-class background. Our family's desperate attempts to impress her parents had been almost painful to watch. "And my house meets these standards?" I asked. "It's in the right neighborhood," Michael chimed in. "Good schools nearby for when we have kids. Plus, you're just one person. You don't need all that space." Just one person. Like my worth was somehow diminished by my single status. "I bought that house myself," I reminded them. "Every penny of the down payment, every mortgage payment, that was my money." "And we're offering to compensate you," Dad said, pulling out a folder. "We've had it appraised. We'll pay you what you put into it." I opened the folder. The number they were offering was barely 2/3 of the current market value. "This is significantly under." "It's a family matter, Sarah," Mom cut in. "We're not trying to make a profit here. We're trying to help your brother start his life." "And what about my life?" I asked quietly. Michael rolled his eyes. "Come on, sis. You can always buy another place. Maybe something more appropriate for your situation." The way he said situation made my skin crawl. Like being single and successful was some kind of character flaw. "I'm not selling my house," I said firmly, closing the folder. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's fingers stopped their drumming. Dad's jaw tightened. Michael's smug smile faltered slightly. "Sarah," Mom's voice had turned cold. "This isn't a request. Your brother needs the house more than you do. Sign it over, or don't bother coming back to this family." I stood up slowly, smoothing my skirt. "I see." "Don't be dramatic," Dad sighed. "We're trying to do what's best for everyone. Everyone, except me." I picked up my purse, tucking the insulting offer inside. "I'll think about it." "There's nothing to think about," Michael said. "Emma's already planning the renovations." That stopped me. "You showed her my house?" "We took a tour last week," Mom admitted. "While you were at work." They'd been in my house, without my knowledge, without my permission, planning to take it from me before they'd even had this conversation. "I need to go," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Sarah," Mom called as I reached the door. "Don't make this difficult. Family means sacrifice." I turned back one last time, taking in the scene. The family dinner I'd never be invited to again if I didn't comply. The parents who saw me as nothing more than a resource for my brother's happiness. The brother who'd never worked for anything in his life. "You're right," I said softly. Family does mean sacrifice. I walked out into the cool evening air, my heels clicking against the sidewalk. In my car, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands shook slightly as I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd been saving for just such an occasion. Marcus, it's Sarah Reynolds. Remember that conversation we had about property investment? I'm ready to move forward. Yes, all of it. And I need it done by morning. I started the engine, watching the lights go on in my parents' living room. They probably thought I was having some kind of emotional breakdown in the driveway. They probably expected me to cave by morning, to come crawling back with signed papers and apologies. They had no idea what I'd been building while they were busy planning my brother's perfect life. No idea that I'd spent the last 3 years quietly buying up properties through a holding company. No idea that I owned half the commercial real estate in their precious neighborhood. And certainly no idea that this morning, while they were planning their ambush over coffee, I'd finalized the purchase of the company that owned their mortgage. Tomorrow, they'd learn what real sacrifice looked like. Tomorrow, they'd discover exactly who they tried to bully. But tonight I would go home to my beautiful Victorian, pour myself a glass of wine, and prepare for the storm I was about to unleash. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers. I smiled, typing back. You're right. Family means sacrifice. See you tomorrow. Then I turned off my phone, pulled into my driveway, and walked into the house they thought they could take from me. The antique chandelier I'd restored myself cast a warm glow over the hardwood floors. The kitchen where I'd hosted dinner parties gleamed with modern appliances. Every corner held memories of my hard work, my independence. Over my dead body, I whispered to the empty rooms. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Morning arrived with a kind of crisp clarity that only comes before life-changing moments. I dressed with precision. Charcoal gray suit, pearl earrings, hair swept back in a professional knot. Power dressing for power moods. My phone had exploded overnight. 15 missed calls from Mom, 12 from Dad, countless texts from Michael ranging from demanding to pleading. I ignored them all as I made coffee in my soon-to-be infamous kitchen. At exactly 8:30 a.m., my doorbell rang. Right on time, I murmured, opening the door to find Marcus waiting with a leather briefcase. Everything's ready, he said, following me to the dining room. The paperwork was filed first thing this morning. You now officially own Highland Property Management. I smiled, spreading the documents across my antique table. And the notices? Being delivered as we speak. He checked his watch. Should hit your parents' mailbox in about 10 minutes. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Michael calling for the 16th time. I finally answered, putting it on speaker. Sarah, where are you? Mom and Dad are freaking out. We need to finish this house thing today. Actually, I replied calmly, I'm at home, in my house, where I'll be staying. Don't be ridiculous, he snapped. We had a deal. No, Michael, you had a plan. I never agreed to anything. He started to respond, but I heard commotion in the background. Mom's voice, shrill with panic. Michael, get over here now. What's going on? He demanded. Why don't you go find out? I suggested. I have a feeling you'll want to be there for this. I ended the call and turned to Marcus. How long do you think it'll take them to figure it out? He grinned, straightening his tie. Given what's in those notices, about 3 minutes. Right again. My phone exploded with texts. Mom, What a hey you doing? Dad, call me immediately. Michael, this has to be a joke. I took a sip of coffee, savoring the moment. The notices they just received would inform them that Highland Property Management, their property management company, had been acquired by a new owner, that all existing rental agreements were under review, that their monthly rent was being adjusted to reflect current market values. A car screeched into my driveway, Michael's BMW, burning rubber in his haste. He burst through my front door without knocking, waving papers wildly. What is this? He demanded, face red with rage. Our rent just doubled. The management company. Highland Property Management, I supplied helpfully. Yes, I bought it this morning. Surprising how many properties they manage in this neighborhood, including Mom and Dad's house, and your condo. He staggered slightly, falling into a chair. You can't do this. Actually, I can. Just like you thought you could take my house. I slid a document across the table. By the way, your lease is up for renewal next month. We should discuss terms. This is insane, he sputtered. I'm calling Dad. Already here. Dad's voice boomed from the doorway. He and Mom rushed in, both clutching identical notices. Sarah Jean Reynolds. Mom started, using my full name like I was still 16. What do you think you're doing? I stood slowly, commanding the room. Making a business decision, just like you taught me family matters should be handled. By becoming our landlord. Dad's voice cracked slightly. By doubling our rent? Market value, I corrected. The same way you valued my house well below market when you tried to take it. Michael jumped up. This is blackmail. No, I said calmly. This is business. But since you mentioned it, I nodded to Marcus, who opened his briefcase again. Let's discuss your renovation plans for my house. The ones you made without my knowledge or consent. Mom's face paled. How did you? I have excellent sources. I spread out photos on the table. Emma and Michael touring my house, measuring rooms, discussing changes with a contractor. Breaking and entering is still illegal, last I checked, even for family. We had a key, Michael protested. For emergencies, I reminded him. Not for planning how to take my property. Dad stepped forward, his businessman mask finally sliding into place. What do you want? Simple. I handed him a new folder. Inside, you'll find 3 documents. First, a formal acknowledgement that my house is not up for discussion. Ever. Second, new lease agreements for all your properties at current market rates. And third, a family contract establishing clear boundaries about financial decisions. And if we refuse. Mom's voice was ice cold. I smiled. Then you'll need to find new places to live. I hear the next neighborhood over is lovely, though it might not meet Emma's family's standards. Michael lunged forward, but Marcus stepped smoothly between us. I wouldn't, he advised quietly. Assault charges would look bad on those country club applications. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock, another piece they'd probably planned to claim for Michael's new life. You're destroying this family, Mom whispered. No, I corrected. I'm teaching it about consequences and respect. Sign the papers, and we can all move forward. Refuse, and you can start packing. Dad picked up a pen, his hand shaking slightly. We don't have a choice, do we? There's always a choice, I said softly. Just like I had a choice last night when you tried to bully me out of my home. I chose to fight back. One by one, they signed. Michael laughed, his signature an angry scrawl across the paper. "Get out," I said quietly. "All of you. And don't ever try to take what's mine again." They left in silence, the weight of their defeat heavy in the air. As the door closed behind them, Marcus whistled low. "Remind me never to cross you," he said, gathering the signed papers. I sank into my favorite armchair, the one Emma had planned to throw out during her renovations. They never saw me coming. What now? I looked around my beautiful home, my hard-earned, fiercely protected sanctuary. Now we wait for phase 2, because this wasn't just about keeping my house. This was about teaching them a lesson they'd never forget, and it was far from over. The fallout was spectacular and immediate. Within hours, the family grapevine was buzzing. Aunt Patricia called to express her concern about my mental state. Cousin Jennifer posted a vague Facebook status about greed destroying families. Emma's mother apparently had a fainting spell when she learned her future daughter-in-law would be living in a common rental. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the next phase of my plan. A week after the confrontation, I sat in my home office reviewing documents when my assistant, Kate, knocked. "The audit reports are in," she announced, placing a thick folder on my desk. "You're going to want to see this." I opened the folder, scanning the contents. Everything I'd suspected about my family's financial dealings was there in black and white. Years of tax discrepancies, questionable property transfers, and most importantly, evidence that my parents had been skimming from my trust fund, the one my grandmother had left specifically to me, for years to support Michael's failing business ventures. "How our lawyers verified everything?" I asked. Kate nodded, triple-checked. "It's all admissible." I leaned back, letting the implications sink in. "Schedule a family meeting. Tomorrow night. Here. All of them. Every last one." I smiled. Time for the other shoe to drop. The next evening, my living room filled with family members, all trying to mask their discomfort at being in the house they tried to take from me. Mom sat rigid on the edge of the sofa, Dad paced by the fireplace, and Michael slouched in a corner with Emma, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Thank you all for coming," I began, standing before them. "I know the past week has been challenging. If you called us here to gloat," Michael started. "Actually," I cut him off. "I called you here to discuss Grandma Alina's trust fund." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom's perfect posture faltered slightly. "That's not up for discussion," Dad said quickly. "Those accounts were settled years ago." Were they? I opened my laptop, connecting it to the TV screen. Because according to these audit reports, those accounts were anything but settled. The screen filled with transaction records, dozens of transfers from my trust fund to various shell companies, all leading back to Michael's failed startups. $3 million, I continued calmly. "That's how much you took. Money that Grandma explicitly left for my education and future. Money you used to bail out Michael's disasters while telling me the fund had been depleted by market crashes. We were protecting the family business," Dad protested weakly. "No," I corrected. "You were protecting your golden child, at my expense, again." Emma stood abruptly. "I think I should leave." "Stay," I commanded. "You should hear this too. After all, you're marrying into this mess." I clicked to the next screen. A detailed timeline of Michael's business failures and the corresponding cover-ups. 7 failed ventures in 5 years, I narrated. Each one funded with stolen money. Money that was legally mine. It wasn't stealing, Mom interjected. We were redistributing family resources. Save it, I cut her off. I've already spoken with the estate lawyers. What you did wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. Michael lunged forward. You wouldn't dare. Actually, Marcus's voice came from the doorway as he entered with a team of lawyers. She already has. I handed out folders to each family member. Inside, you'll find 2 options. Option 1. You repay every penny taken from my trust fund, with interest, and sign new agreements acknowledging your misconduct. Option 2. I'd press charges for fraud and embezzlement. You'd send your own family to jail. Aunt Patricia gasped. You tried to steal my house, I reminded her. After stealing my inheritance. After years of favoring Michael and dismissing my success. So yes, if necessary, I would. Dad flipped through the documents, his face ashen. These repayment terms. They're impossible. Not impossible, I corrected. Just difficult. Like building a successful business from scratch, while your family undermines you at every turn. I moved to stand by the window, my window, in my house that I'd fought to keep. You have 24 hours to decide. Choose wisely. The next day, one by one, they came back, each signing the repayment agreements with varying degrees of resentment and shame. Michael was last, Emma notably absent. She called off the engagement, he said as he signed. Said she couldn't marry into a family with financial irregularities. Funny how karma works, I replied, not entirely unsympathetically. After they'd all left, I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen they'd tried to give away, and poured a glass of wine. My phone buzzed with a text from Grandma Aliner's old lawyer. Your grandmother would be proud. She always said you were the smart one. I smiled, remembering her words before she died. Don't let them dim your light, Sarah. Sometimes the biggest act of love is standing up for yourself. The following months brought changes. Mom and Dad downsized to meet their repayment obligations. Michael actually got a real job. The extended family learned to tread carefully around me, their whispered judgments replaced with reluctant respect. And me. I expanded my property company, launching a program to help single women become homeowners. Named it the Eleanor Reynolds Foundation in honor of the grandmother who'd believed in me when no one else did. 1 year later, I hosted a dinner party in my beautiful Victorian. Not for family, they were still working on understanding boundaries, but for the women in my foundation's program. As I watched them share stories and dreams, I realized something profound. Family isn't just about blood. Sometimes it's about finding people who respect your worth, who celebrate your success instead of trying to steal it. My phone buzzed, Mom asking if I'd join them for Sunday dinner. To try to heal, she wrote. I responded simply, maybe someday, when you're ready to see me as I am, not as who you tried to make me be. Then I turned back to my guests, raising my glass in a toast. To owning your power, I said, and never letting anyone take what's yours. The women cheered, their voices filling my home with the kind of warmth no family dinner had ever provided. Later that night, I stood in my garden, looking up at the house I'd fought so hard to keep. It wasn't just about the property anymore. It was about standing up for yourself, about showing the world and your family that you won't be bullied or diminished. Sometimes the biggest victory isn't in winning the fight, but in choosing to fight it all. And as I watched the sunset from my back porch, my house, my victory, I finally felt at peace. They tried to take everything from me, but in doing so, They'd given me something invaluable, the strength to stand alone.